Hi guys, welcome back to another stream of It's a DARMAR, and today I have one guest that all of you have been waiting for a long time to come. His name is Kris Costa, also known as Antropus, and he is working in ILM. He worked on some of the biggest titles you know, and I know that many of you have a dream to work for ILM like I do, and he is an amazing artist that does really realistic sculpts. He's for a long time in this industry, and I love his work since 2004 when I first time saw it, and I'm so happy to have him on this stream. Hi Kris.
Hi, Darko. How is it going, man?
I'm excellent. I'm having amazing guest, and I'm super happy that he decided to join me. How about you?
Oh, great. I'm sorry I have to bail before. It's like you invited me before, but I mean, like I was in vacation, so that didn't work out. But I'm glad it worked out today.
Yeah, I'm so happy that we are gonna talk about you and your work because you're an amazing artist, man. I've been following your work for so long, like 2004 or something like that, when you were on CG Talk.
Yeah, that was like good times, right? Like all the CG challenge, they're so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were at the time like they were like ArtStation now, and I remember your. I will show it on my screen. I remember
Mhm.
your work from Master and Servants, and
Oh, yeah, yeah.
it was a kangaroo with a girl, man. I was blown away when I saw it. I remember that Brazilians were taking over CG Talk at the time. You, Fausto Di Martini, it was insane.
Yes.
It was
Alex
insane.
Alex Oliver. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So all of you were taking the challenges, and I can tell you honestly, you guys inspired me to pursue this career.
Oh, that's so cool, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, no, thank you. It was such a boost for me to see that kind of work online, and I was so happy to see it.
Mm.
So, what I want to know, my first question for tonight is, of course, how did your career start? Did you draw when you were younger, or it started later? How did that go?
Yeah, so I started drawing when I was about like 5, right? And I got into drawing because I saw some of my father's books. My father passed away before I was born. A lot of people know this story, and we got like this bookshelf delivered to our house. Like my grandmother actually, she sent to us this bookshelf with all his books, and we had no access to it until like I was 5 years old. And then when we got that, it was like a bookshelf, like the entire thing, right? Like the furniture and the books in it, and it had like so many awesome art books in it. It's like a lot of them like French and some Spanish stuff as well. And I got totally into that. It's like I had this idea of my father. I didn't never met him. It's like I was in my mom's belly when he passed away.
Mm.
And then when I had just this idea about the guy, right? Like all this cool things that my mom talked about him, that he loved like art and literature and all kinds of stuff. And I fell in love with all this stuff. It's like there's a lot of medicine. It's like a medical stuff. So like medical books, like I got totally into it. It had like all kinds of weird shit, right? Like it was like, it was like some ulcers and, it's like all that stuff, like all those illnesses, like graphically represented, it's like cancer and all that stuff. And it was like, oh man, this stuff is nasty, but I love the drawings, it's like the illustrations and everything. And so that's how I started like looking more into like art, it's like as a kid. Got into like the masters of obviously still my favorites today. It's like Velasquez is still like probably like one of my very favorite ones, and then obviously like Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and all those masters. And I started drawing straight away. I was like, and I never stopped until I was probably like 17 years old. And the thing that happens is that I was doing a lot of drawings, and I used to join like a group of people doing portraits at the square in the small city where I lived. And I was a kid in the middle of these people. I was like I was probably like 12 or 13 years old, and I was doing portraits in there, and getting paid was pretty cool. But and then in school as well, I got like some scholarship. So my mom didn't have to pay the entire price, so we paid like half of the price for 4 or 5 years, I think. I think more like 4 years, because I was doing some drawings for the school. But the thing is, like a lot of stuff started happening around that, and some people started like taking advantage of me, kind of like it's like I started doing a lot of free stuff, like lots of drawings for free.
I see.
And I started getting very upset with that, and I felt like used as a young guy, right? So when I was about like 17, I was like, I said like, fuck it, I don't want to draw anymore. That was it.
There was a crash. There was a crash, right? Immediate, like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. So I kind of like I stopped drawing altogether, and then it was right at the time, you know, it's like I entered a bank. Like my mom had a friend, and he said like, oh, your kid wants to. Does he want to work? I was like, and she was like, yeah, I think he wants to work. And because we came from a very humble family, we didn't have a lot of money. And then I said, yeah, so what do I have to do, right? and the guy said like, oh, you just have to have like good scores in school and blah blah blah. I was like, oh, I'm fucked. Because I was a terrible student, man. I was like, all I wanted to do was to draw. I did lots of drawings of caricatures of my teachers. I was like making fun of everybody, trolling people since I was very young. and like, you know, it's like that kind of kid who just like looks out of the window and just don't want to be there, you know, in class.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a good student until I kind of like, you know, it's like I completely failed one year, and then I kind of like snapped, you know, it's like, and I was like, okay, my mom's paying for my studies, right? And I'm not taking it seriously at all, and I felt so terrible about it. And it was just like, sometimes takes something for you to snap. And then I remember like that year I became like a really good student. It was like I just like joined all the nerds. And I would be there early every time, you know, it was like for the first time ever, and I became like a very good student. But it was never my thing, you know. It's like, but then later in life, I mean, when I finally got to college, very late, because like I said, like I started working at the bank when I was 15 years old, and I worked in there until I was like 30 years old. So like 15 years of my life working in the bank.
That long you paused. You paused for a very long time, your art career.
Yeah, exactly. So while I was at the bank, I mean, like I started like joining. I joined the university there finally when I was like 25, 26 years old. So I decided to do fine art. So I was there for like 5 years doing fine art. I left like the last semester because I got a job offer in the United States. So I was like, oh. But the thing is, like, a lot of people do this thing very linearly, right? Like, so first you go to school, and then you go to college, and then you get your diploma, and then you try to apply to a job or something like that, or go to an art school and try to get the job.
Everything then nobody wants you. Then nobody wants you. That's part of the process.
but in my case, I mean, like, I had a good job since I was like 15, and then when I was 18, I passed the test and I became a banker, and I had like money, you know. It's like, so I was able to afford the stuff I needed, like you know, it's like the computers I needed for learning. I was able to buy my first apartment, you know, my first house with the money from the bank. So I have nothing to complain about. Impressive. And then for me, it was very optional to actually go to like to college or university, because like it was kind of like, okay, I want to do something just because I love that stuff. I love art and I want to get back to it. So I'm gonna do it because I want to do it, right? Not because I'm being forced by society to follow a certain path and land a job later on. So everything I did, it was as a hobby first, and then I got more serious at the college. You know, I was like doing lots of life drawing and learning a lot of stuff that I wasn't interested before. That was like you know, it's like interconnected disciplines like psychology, and like, you know, it's like learning more about the importance of composition, and about, you know, it's like all kinds of stuff that it's related, but it's not necessarily like the practical thing about like you know, it's like for example, like a drawing or something like that. It's more like there's a lot of conceptual stuff that goes around it, that I think it was very important to me as an artist. You know, it's like a lot of those concepts I brought to those challenges, for example, like this machine flash challenge. There's a lot of psychological stuff in there. With the girl with the kangaroo was kind of like a joke, right? Because I felt like, okay, a lot of people, like if you talk about like master and servant, you're going to do normally like the cliche stuff, right? You can imagine like a gigantic guy, like a Viking or something. and then there's this almost naked woman with some chains or something like that, right? So it's like the cliche, it's like the the oppressor and the oppressed, right? And then I thought like, oh, what if I switch the roles, right? And I make like this bigger guy the slave of this little girl, because I had it's like that idea about the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The Veruca character, right?
It came out about that time, right? The Chocolate Factory. Yeah, it was that years.
No, but I mean, like I'm like from back in the day, from the first movie, right? Like, and if you look at the for example, like the way that she's dressed in my, it's like in my work or the challenge, she's dressed like Veruca. She's dressed in red, but she is this nasty little girl, and she's just like enslaving this kangaroo and using him to steal candy for her.
Sounds like my childhood. Girls using it to steal candy for them.
But that's the thing, it's like always like trying to come from a different angle, It's like if everything is too mainstream, if people are thinking too much the same, sometimes I think I'm more like driven to actually approach things from a different angle, So sometimes, I mean, like you land into a common place as usual, because I mean, like we have this unconscious mind that's basically like it's shared by everyone. Like people can borrow from it, right? So like ideas come like very similarly sometimes, like for multiple artists. But at the same time, I try like consciously to approach things a little differently. It's like that's the thing that's important thing for artists, is to try to be a little bit different. It doesn't matter like if it's a subtle thing, the way you do things, but just like try to stand out of the crowd. It's like I mean, like there's a lot of stuff that's basically the same. And it's always refreshing when you see someone doing something slightly different, It's like, so that's what I try to do as well.
Do you think, you mentioned that you use psychology and you read about it, because I also read about psychology, and I think that the best artists always, they read a lot about psychology of the people, how they think and everything. Do you think it helped you during your career?
Oh, definitely. I mean, like, I'm not going to say I read a ton about psychology, but everything I read about psychology is very, very intriguing to me. It's like sometimes I'm talking to my wife and I say, like, that's a passion I know I have, and I have to dedicate more time to it. But that's the thing, it's like when you have 24 hours in your day and you're already packed with stuff, it's like it's so much stuff going on. I never found the time, but I'm always fascinated by the, it's like from very subtle ways of reading someone, right? Or even like the evil stuff about psychology, right? Like the way that you can mass control entire population, by using by using keywords and it's like there's a lot of studies done about. There's a guy you should take a look if you never did. He's the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And his name, let me see, it's I'm kind of blanking right now. I think it's Bernays, Edward Bernays, something like that. And I was reading about it's like the way that he approached, for example, like back in the day when they are trying to convince people to smoke, right? Like, because back in the day it was like you have to smoke, and then the target was basically like the male population, and then all of a sudden like, oh, what if we start selling cigarettes to women as well? It's like we have to actually convince them that's a good thing for them to smoke. And then the whole plan was to actually sell that as empowerment. So basically, like, you sell empowerment. You don't sell a product. You sell something very psychological, something that you feel strong about it, right? So the whole campaign was about that. It's like, never mind that that's going to give you cancer or anything. The idea is to actually sell your product disguised as empowerment. So, it's like all those things. And this is what the media does these days, right? So it's like there is this whole evil thing about psychology. Like, people play with your emotions. That's the way they sell you products. That's the way they sell you ideologies and things like that. And it fascinates me and it scares me as well. But I like to think about the more like beneficial things about psychology. It's like how you can connect with other human beings through your work. It's like I believe like when you do your work like in an honest way, really putting feelings into it, really putting thoughts into it. You don't need to say many things. It's like, I think the work has the power to speak for itself, as long as you're technically good enough to be able to communicate. Because there's a lot about like the technical aspects, right? Like, people are too concerned about the technical aspects, and it's a good concern to have. That's basically like the tool you're gonna use to be able to tell your stories. Basically, that's how I see it. Or to be able like to convey an idea, or to communicate, or to create empathy.
Yeah.
But so you have to be good enough technically. Now, there are a lot of like exceptional artists out there technically who don't convey many ideas, who the work looks a little stale to me. It's like, it looks a little bit lifeless. So I rather see the work of someone these days who is not technically like a master of anything, but who has a ton of soul behind the work. And you can see that through the way that, like the eyes communicate, or the way that story is being told. It's like there are elements reinforcing a certain idea. And I'm more fascinated with that kind of stuff these days than seeing a perfect piece of, it's like a technically perfect work.
I agree completely on that, because from my point of view is that being a good artist, not having technical skills come by time. I mean, everybody can learn technical skills, but being a good artist, you have to explore a lot, life, everything, like literally.
Life.
The more you put in the box, the better it is, but it is super hard, because you have to be all the time outside of that box, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you need to fill your head with different experiences, and that's how I also did it. I learned everything from car design to psychology to sports, and I packed it in my head, and then from that I pick up the things and I use them on my art. So I like that you're talking about that kind of stuff. It is easy to be a technical person. It is easy. I'm honestly saying that, no disrespect, but you can learn. Everybody can learn technical skill. I remember when I was in school, I didn't know how to draw. I'm honestly telling you, I was 18 years old. I was drawing stickmans. But I learned it because there are a set of rules that you learn, but then the creativity comes.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
but everything has to be in this at the service of your ideas, right? Like anything that comes, like I mean, like techniques are just tools, right? Like it doesn't matter what media you're using. It's like I love the fact that nowadays you have something like Instagram, where all the artists who influenced me, like traditional artists, digital artists, it's like so many amazing artists. It's this very kind of like democratic kind of place where I don't see people judging each other too much. It's like they're always like dickheads, obviously, like going to be like kind of like this elitist kind of idea about like, oh, my media is more important than yours because I'm doing this way. Right?
I liked when you said that. I opened the work of you, the boxer, where he has a glove on his head. So perfect.
Yeah.
Moment, perfect timing.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's so cool to me. Like the Instagram to me is one of the best ones so far when it comes to media, because as long as you're not following like it's like those brainless celebrities, like I call, because then you're gonna be like. You're gonna be flooded with shit that it's like it's everywhere. It's like I rather just follow the people who actually enjoy seeing the work and get inspired by. So I follow like 1,000-something artists in there. No celebrities like actors or anything like that. I just get like an amazing feed every time I open my Instagram. I don't get ads. It's like I get like just inspiration constantly, and I love that. And when I post some of my work, digital work, it's like I would say like it's almost like half and half these days. Like half of my followers are kind of like digital, half are traditional. There's so many traditional artists following me in there, and they don't judge the media. They just like the work the way it is, And what I tell people sometimes is that it's a playing field right now in a way when you post something online, because if you're a traditional artist and you have a sculpture in your studio or in a gallery, the way to experience that sculpture and to see from different angles and all that stuff, the only possibility is either like you have like a virtual headset that you can be there, or if you're there in person, actually experiencing and seeing that piece. It's like but when that piece is like basically like becomes a photograph that's just shared on Instagram, in my opinion, is not different from a digital art. Basically like you're in the same. You're talking about like a 2D piece right now. It's a 2D piece representing a 3D artwork. It can be digital or traditional, but at that point, we are looking at the same thing. So I like when people post stuff, for example, like my renders, I always try to do something that looks like a physical thing. So that's why I post like those more realistic renders, but also like those clay renders that they look like they're a physical thing. Because in my mind, that's the way I can approach someone like a traditional artist, kind of like it's something recognizable for them. If I show like a Zbrush viewport without any shadows or anything that to make it look like a physical thing, I think traditional artists have a little bit of trouble. It's like observing the form. So that's why I try to kind of create something that looks physical. So and I was very successful with that. It's like because a lot of those people, they comment on the work itself. So the media becomes secondary. So basically they're looking at how good you are with like, I don't know, like likeness, or how good you are like placing the hair. It's like I get comments sometimes like, I got the one the other day was like from this lady. She's like a hair artist, but for practical stuff. So she does hair for like practical special effects. And she was talking about like, man, I didn't know that hair in CG was becoming this good. It's like, so she was like impressed. So it's cool, it's like because you kind of blur the line, and all of a sudden you're seeing each other as artists, and not someone like a button presser. Like a lot of people still think that we are button pressers. It's like, yeah, we kind of like we do digital art by just pressing a bunch of buttons and things just pop in the screen. So it's kind of cool. It's like you see like people can see skill in different medias these days, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're talking about, because the friends of mine which are 2D concept artists, they always tell me. They make jokes about me that I'm a 3D artist, that I'm not a concept designer, and I never understood that, because I was always looking how I can improve my workflow. If it's a 3D, it's a 3D. If it's a VR, it's a VR. But at the end of the day, it's how you present your work. And it's fascinating that all people who do 3D, they go through this, but what is good that it is blending, as you said, and it's becoming normal. It's becoming normal. The 3D is not anymore something strange or disrespected. It's the people are starting to understand the potential in it. Actually, it is the present now. It's not anymore the future,
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting is that a lot of people are like traditional artists. They're kind of like getting more and more into 3D printing. So sometimes, it's like you see people like scanning their pieces, their actual physical pieces, scanning them and then tweaking in ZBrush, and then it's like basically like printing from a digital media, right? So it's like the smart people, I believe. It's like the ones who are actually seeing the potential about all this stuff and how much time they can save by doing certain things digitally. Of course, you have to pick your battles. If you're going to model everything completely symmetrical, right? It's like I model a lot of stuff very symmetrically up to a point just to save me time, especially if I'm doing pores and stuff like that. But then I break the symmetry later on. But I know that some people, they like to, it's like start from the get-go, like completely asymmetrical and everything. So if you're a traditional artist, you're probably going to do everything asymmetrically. You're going to scan, and then you're going to tweak that, and maybe like you can even experiment with like different poses and things like that. It's like, and then 3D print some of those experiments. And the guys I admire the most are the guys actually doing that kind of stuff, like not afraid of trying something, because it can be very beneficial to them. You see a guy like who I deeply admire, like Rick Baker, right?
Yeah.
And he is like, when he got into ZBrush, he was already like 60 years old, and he was a kick-ass ZBrush artist from the get-go. And to this day, I mean, like you go to his feed on Instagram, I really encourage you guys, if you don't follow Rick Baker, just follow him. It's very inspiring, He still does a lot of stuff as a hobby these days because he's not in the industry anymore. He's retired, but the other day he was actually 3D printing some molds and then casting them in silicone and creating those little brain creature or whatever, So using anything that's available to be able to convey the idea, which is goes back to what I said. It's like you have an idea, you have a concept about something you want to come up with. What's the media that fits that better? If you can accomplish that with 3 different media, is great. If you can do it with one single media, great. It's like it doesn't matter as long as the idea is strong enough, or the life in the character is there, something that you actually people can connect to. It's like it's very cool to see a model in T pose with the perfect anatomy. But it's even nicer, right? Like when you see a model with a very dramatic pose, something more theatrical, or a character that actually looks like it's looking straight at you. It's like you can actually connect eye to eye, because that's what we do as humans. So yeah, that stuff always fascinates me.
Yeah, I think my advice is same as yours. The more you can do and the better and faster you can do it, the better it is. I mean, I remember I was on a lecture here in Belgrade and on a mechanical engineering faculty, and there was some art talk, and the guy came and he was talking about the thing you said, and he was talking, that was 2007, I think, and he was saying they had a new printing machine which was printing on the canvas, and he was a painter.
Yes.
Immediately on the canvas, and he was like, I was so poor before this, now I'm a millionaire. Why? Because I print my paintings on the canvas, they look the same, and I sell them to hotels, and I became millionaire last year because I could never reproduce this many. So yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, there's a guy in Brazil, Cicero Avila, I believe. Cicero Davila. He's a marble sculpture, and he's incredible, dude. He's like a modern master, and he did I'm sorry. He does like this amazing sculptures in marble with like you can kind of like Bernini, it's like you can feel the soft forms underneath, like the transparency that he generates. Everything is like it's beautifully sculpted. But the thing is, like, he's so talented, and there are so many people demanding his work that he wasn't being able like to deliver, because it takes many months to get one of those marble sculptures done, right? Yeah. So it's gonna take, let's say, like it takes like 6 to 8 months to create one of those. So what he did, he actually invested in one of those. I think that's what I read about. If someone knows differently, correct me. But he bought one of those robot arms. It's like kind of like a CNC, like a 6-axis, like basically like it's a robot arm. And that thing actually is, so for example, like he can start with a piece like digital, or start with the traditional and then scan it and turn it to digital, and then use that to actually send to the robot to actually do like a rough cut of the marble. So it gets like something that's a rough cut. And he still finishes and everything, it's like he still does all the fine work and everything. But a lot of stuff, like he cut like the time, I think like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times the time that he used to do. So he's actually being able to deliver more of his work. More people are being able to appreciate the work. He still has his hand in there because he's still finishing everything. But he's using the technology to, it's like obviously like in a smart way to be able to, it's like to have more profit with it. Also delivering to more people who can actually appreciate his work. And it's just like it's a perfect combination to me. It's like someone who still uses their skill, but doesn't ignore the new technology there. It's like that's right there.
Yeah. I'm so happy that we are talking about this, because guys, on the next stream I'm bringing someone who does production of collectibles and 3D printing. So I think you're gonna love it. Also, we are on the middle of the stream. If you have time, please hit the subscribe button, because we'll have a lot more guests like this coming. And for now, we have amazing Kris Costa that we're gonna talk for 35 more minutes about his amazing art, because man, I love your art. I mean, you're such a unique artist. You've been working in ILM for 12 years or something like that, right?
Yeah, 12 years, yep.
How did that happen? How did you enter ILM? Because I know it's always a dream of every artist out there to be in ILM. So how did that happen?
Yeah, it's like everything happened like kind of like organically. It's not like I planned anything, it's like I never sent like a demo reel to anyone. Actually, I deliver a demo reel in person at Sony ImageWorks back in the day, because a friend of mine told me, like, I was working at the Omation Studios, and it's like, oh man, you should go there and apply and blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay. So it kind of dragged, But in general, what happened is that so I was working in the bank, and then all of a sudden, like, they closed the department, and I was working in the marketing department. So it's not like I was doing banking stuff. I was actually doing a lot of computer stuff. So they started this channel, TV channel, internal channel for the bankers in there to teach people stuff. And then I was called to actually help with the way it looked. It's like, so the visual stuff. So I did lots of flying logos, and then, like, it's like lots of like After Effects animations and things like that. But then they closed the department, and all of a sudden I was like, oh man, what should I do? I think that's a good opportunity to actually try to get out of the bank and see the world out there, because I was just like, in my mind, I would be just like, I would retire being a banker. And I saw nothing else other than that, But I was like, I was in touch with some people from a company called Mr. Graphics in Brasilia, the city where I was working at that point. And they said, like, man, we really like the work, It's like, and I had just very basic work back in the day, It's like some Photoshop stuff, some little animations in there, but nothing super exceptional. But they trusted, It's like, they said, like, man, you should come to work with us, blah blah blah. I was like, and the owner, he said, one of the owners, he said, like, how much you make at the bank? And I said, oh man, it's this much, It's like, it's a good money. I mean, I'm providing to myself and bought an apartment, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, we're going to match it. I was like, really? I was like, yeah, we're going to match it. And I was like, that's so cool, man. And then for the first time in 15 years, right, since I started working, all of a sudden someone was actually paying for my art alone instead of, like, for my job as a it's like a worker in there. So I took the job, and then I started working for them. And I worked for about a year, but halfway, kind of like the job kind of like started slowing down. They didn't have a lot of stuff going on. So, and I was still going to college, It's like it was a crazy time for me, because I was doing exactly what I do these days, going to bed at like 2 or 3 in the morning, right? Killing myself. And that's part of me, I guess. But I was doing this, man, and then waking up in the morning, going to college. So like the morning I would get to college, and then in the afternoon I would go to work for this company, and then back home doing my own studies and learning more stuff and learning anatomy, learning all kinds of stuff, and then going to bed late again. It's like sleeping 4 hours, I don't know. So that happened for a long time. And then in that time, I actually entered one of those challenges. I entered the Machine Flash challenge. And then after that, man, I would say like everything started when I was doing a short movie that I never released. I never finished, actually, and I did some animation with a little like a black guy. He had like just his head bouncing around. He was supposed to be the main character of the movie. He was a plumber, and he was was supposed to be like this guy trying to fix the plumbing in this old lady's house. But it was a very freaky house, kind of like Adam's Family kind of thing. So I had to test all his expressions to like scared and all that stuff. So I posted a little animation on CG Talk, and I got front page, man. And then a lot of job offers start like showing up and all that stuff. And then in the meantime, doing this whole craziness about like, it's like, oh, okay, so there's something going on now. I entered the challenge, and I ended up like winning the challenge, and then when everything happened all at the same time, I got my visa approved to work for Animation Studios. That's the job that I took the first one. The first company to contact me was Blizzard, actually, but I didn't speak English. It was a disaster. My interview was a disaster. But the second one was, I think, like was some company in Europe. I didn't take that one because my dream was to work in California, because I knew all the industry was in here. Not anymore. But
it's spreading around. It's spreading around.
Yeah. Back in the day, that was the place. So I got the job in here, and then when I finally won the challenge, the CG Talk, like the Machine Flash, then other companies in here start being interested, because I was already here, so it was easier to just get a hold of me. So Cafe FX got me for an interview. So I went for an interview. So I work at Animation Studios as an animator. So I was just animating at Animation for almost a year. And then Cafe FX called me and they wanted to work for them. And they gave me a good offer. So I went there and I worked on Pan's Labyrinth and Evan Almighty, some other stuff. And I was basically a generalist. I was animating, doing some modeling, doing texturing, a little bit of rigging, like facial rigging stuff. And then from that point on, I was at Cafe FX for about, like, I would say 2 years, maybe a little bit longer there, 2.5 years. And then someone who worked with me at Automation Studios, the first studio here in the United States, a recruiter called Rosie Server, she actually saw that I was, you know, it's like I always post stuff online. And then she saw my work in there, and she said, like, oh, we have this project going on at Lucas. You want to come for an interview? I was like, sure. So I came for an interview. And it was a project like unrelated to Star Wars. It was a new franchise and stuff. And then I got the job, and it was great. You know, it's like, so I got there, and the interview, the supervisors told me, like, oh, we really like your animation work. You know, it's like you have a ton of very cool animation, but your modeling skills are very impressive. So would you take the job as a modeler only? Would you mind switching? You know, I was like, no, not at all. Anything I can do to help. So I took the job, and then it was funny because I got the job. I got all the paperwork, all the visa, everything approved. The day before I started, a friend of mine actually contacted me, and he said, you know what? That project was canceled. It was like, what?
Oh.
And then, dude, what should I do now? I was like, I have my visa approved, and I was like, what can you do? Just show up. Let's see what happens. So I went there, and then first day people were bummed because the project was not there anymore. And then I said, like, so what I'm going to do now? I have the visa. And then Clone Wars was going on. And then someone from Clone Wars told me, like, oh, we would love to have you working for Clone Wars. So I got the job working for Clone Wars, basically like with the same salary, which was a VFX salary, doing TV stuff. So I was very happy with that because it was very easy work. And then at some point someone said, like, dude, you should try to get to ILM. And because it's all part of Lucas, you imagine, like, oh, it's the same thing. You know, it's like you're just going to go for an interview and everything's going to be fine. But it turns out that you're at basically like under the same umbrella. Back in the day, it wasn't Disney yet, it was Lucasfilm. But they're completely different companies, you know. So basically, like, you need a new visa, you need everything different. It was like, oh, I didn't know that. But I went for an interview, and in the interview, like I said, I never sent a demo reel. So I brought my laptop with me, and they plugged in a projector in there, and they had a room with like maybe like 12, I think it was like 12 people or something like that. Some supervisors, some artists, and they plugged in the projector in there, and I start just showing some of my work, you know, the personal stuff I was doing. And they really like it, but they didn't have anything to offer at that point because in this industry, sometimes people freak out when they go to an interview and they don't hear back. It's because this industry works with windows. Sometimes, like, the window is not quite open. You know, it's like they are interested in hiring you because they like your work, but there is nothing in the pipeline for you. So there is no point to hire someone and then just get like you know, it's like they are not going to make any profit, right? So I had to wait for a couple of, I think like over a month, you know, it's like until they called me back. And then they called me back and they said, well, we have an offer for you. It was like, oh, that's amazing. That's my dream to work for you guys. Okay, so what's the offer? I was like, well, the offer is like you come to work for us for a temporary contract, 6 months. And then if you like your work, we keep you. I was like, oh, okay. But here's the deal. I mean, like I'm under a visa and I'm working at Lucas, and I really like the job in here. I mean, like, it's, you know, I would love to work for ILM, but it's a very steady work. And I'm afraid that if you guys don't like me, you're going to let me go. And then all of a sudden I'm going to be out of a visa, and I was like, probably back to my country. And they said, like, well, we cannot offer anything other than that. It was like, okay, I'm really sorry. I have to say no. So today, telling the story, people think, like, you know, it's like, dude, it was like I was in a room with like 3 of my friends, and they all look at me weird. And it's like, what did you do, dude? You burned the bridge with ILM. I was like, what the heck? And then I was blaming myself. I was like, I'm so stupid, you know? And then that lasted for like 2 days or so. And then they called me back and they said, like, you know, we passed your work around. Supervisor, look at it again. And we think you're a very good candidate to be staff. So we are offering you a staff position. I was like, what? So that's how I got the job. It's like nowadays it's much different because becoming a staff it's harder. It's like people just it's very temporary. Like the whole industry is like that. It's not ILM. It's like the whole industry just is like mostly like temporary contracts. But I'm happy to just be part of the staff. It's like for 12 years now. And I went through a lot of, it was like coming and going with different people in this industry, like a lot of movement. And I always stayed, So, and I think I attribute that, I'm not going to say like talent alone. I think a quality that I have, and I think people should try to get, is like it's being a good problem solver. It's like maybe not the best technical guy, but a good problem solver. And what I mean by that is like, someone comes with a problem, right? Comes with there is this challenge here for this new project. And then you can either freak out about it and just think like, oh my God, I'm going to have to reinvent the wheel. Or you can just like think like very clearly, okay, so what's the best way to approach that to accomplish what we need to accomplish? And I think like ILM is packed with people like that. It's like you have so many people who are amazing problem solvers. And I believe those guys have a much better chance to stay than let's say like someone who is uber talented but is not a good problem solver. It's just like, someone is a good technician but not someone who is playing nicely with the team, for example. He doesn't know how to accomplish something that's necessary for that specific project. And I think I'm a key part of that team because of that. It's like the same as all the other guys who are key parts of that team is like I think people know how to make things work. So that's how I got to ILM.
Nice story. I like how your story goes everywhere, like around, like you're going from here to there, from here to there. I love that, man. But it's super nice that you got the job there. I mean, it's also a nice story where you set your rules, because many artists have a problem setting their rules. Don't understand that. We need to set those rules. I mean, you can't always bend your spine and everybody's stepping over you. And I hear a lot of artists when I'm speaking with them. They're like, this guy used me, this guy used me. I mean, it happens. It's a part of the learning curve. But at one point, you need to understand your rights. So I'm happy that you said that.
At the same time, like it comes with how ambitious you are as a person, right? I mean, like I don't think I am an ambitious person. Like obviously, like if you are doing something that you love doing, you expect some recognition because you're like, okay, it's like I'm putting all this effort here. I would love if people like the stuff I do, obviously, right? But in terms of like being like working with a target about like I want to become a millionaire, It's like, dude, you're doing it wrong. If you're trying to become a millionaire being a VFX artist, you're already doing it wrong. You have to do it for the fun of it and for the passion of it. But the thing is, like, I think it comes with that. It's like it's easier to establish your own rules, or it's like you put like, okay, I can go until certain point and I don't pass that because that's gonna be basically like affecting me as a person. I think it's like if you don't have that with you and you're very ambitious, for example, you don't mind, for example, like working for almost nothing because you're looking for the next thing you might get out of that, And I don't think I ever did that. I always put some value in my work. You have the choice of liking it or not liking it, but I'm not gonna sell myself cheap. It's like I'm not gonna just like, okay, be a prostitute of this industry, So I think like I have a very fair salary and like the price of my classes I think is a fair price as well. Some people complain like it's too expensive, it's too much out there and stuff. It's like, but it's packed with stuff. I mean, like you're gonna see like people posting their work, like people who took my class, And I'm yet to see people complaining about like, oh, that class sucked. It was a total waste of money. It's like all the people I see, at least online, they're happy with it because I'm being extra generous with everything I do. It's like during my class, I'm basically like more concerned about, okay, I want you to freaking learn something. Okay, I'm tired of people trying to scam other people. It's like not hiding a lot of stuff. And so in my class, when people take it, I go as far as opening, for example, if I have a shader network of my skin shader or whatever, I open every single node, I show every single setting, I show every single map, I show how every single map is painted and how every single map is plugged into the network. Everything, it's like I don't have any secrets, and it's kind of like for half of the class, like 2 hours classes, half of the class I'm doing my thing and try to explain things, and then the second half is open for questions. And I tell people constantly, it's like, ask me anything, and I'm gonna do my best to actually explain that in a way that you understand. If you have, for example, like if you saw any of my work online and you have a question about how I created it or how I did, just ask me to open it, and I'm going to open the file. So I did this many, many times. I did like 3 classes so far, going to the 4th one in October. And that's the way I operate. It's like I want people to actually have access to all those things, and then learn with it as much as possible. But the thing is, like, I cannot do that for free. I did this for free for 10 years of my life with a big forum I had in Brazil, like almost 30,000 people. I made like lots of tutorials for free. I was like constantly helping people, like back in the day with CG Talk, back in the day on Zbrush Central. I helped a ton of people with tutorials and stuff, everything free. And what people don't get now is that I'm an older person. I'm almost 50. I'm going to be 48 this year. And I have a family. It's like I live in a very expensive area here in Marin, and 2 kids to provide to. So like when you become like the main person of a family, and people are counting on you for all kinds of stuff, then it's unfair to me to think that I can do just everything for free. It's like I have to put some value in my work. I think I had my fair share of helping everybody, and I still do. I mean, I can post anything on Instagram. People ask questions, I answer straight away. I still do that a lot, but at the same time, I have this side job now, which is like almost like my second job, which is like a teacher. It's like trying to teach stuff and trying to do the best I can, and in a way that people don't feel scammed. It's like I want people to get like something that's a rich experience. It's like all the stuff I had to, it's like spend nights and nights like learning about parameters and things like that for shaders or whatever. Everything is there ready to go. So it's not like there's a lot of time saving, I believe, it comes with those classes. So that's why it's valued the way it is. It's just the way it is.
I completely agree with you. Art has to be paid, even though we are taught that art is for free. But when you're learning someone, I mean, he needs to pay you to learn. And I completely understand. People always like to complain about that kind of stuff, but it's the way it is, It's the way it is. You can't avoid haters. There will always be some haters, but there will always be some people who respect you even more than you deserve. I like to say it like that, because there are some people who compensate for that haters. They give you much more love, So
yeah, exactly.
So that's I think a circle of life. But what I'm interested, what's the name of your course, and when is it starting?
So the name of the website, can you see my screen now?
Okay, let's immediately move, guys. Kris is gonna show us his process also, so let's move to his screen.
Yeah, so, I don't mind staying a little bit longer as well if you have the time. But
absolutely.
So the website is called flyonthewall.studio, and some people, like you said, the haters gonna think like, oh my God, he thinks we are flies now, No, there's always someone offended with anything you say, right? But the thing is, like, it's a very, very simple concept. I mean, like, fly on the wall is nothing more. There's nothing implicit in the name. I'm not diminishing other artists by calling them flies. What it is basically like, okay, just imagine like you have this artist that you want to know how they work, like someone like, I don't know, like Romuek, it's like someone much more important than I am. And you want to know his techniques and all this stuff. And sometimes we think like, oh, it would be so cool if I could be a fly on the wall, watching what he's doing, exactly what he's doing, with no secrets. I can just like gather everything that he's doing. That's the entire concept. Basically, like I'm streaming from home. I'm working from my computer, so it's like it's a computer I'm comfortable with. All my settings are in place. My hardware is the way I like and everything. So it's very comfortable. I'm here at home, and then people just join me 4 times a week. 2 times every time, 2 hours every time. So it's like 32 hours of content, plus the reviews that I have bi-weekly. So a total of about 40 hours of content. And it's pretty intensive, right? Like either I start with a base mesh, or in the last class, I started like this model here, which is my wife. That was started from a sphere, right? And then I have everything recorded. The way that the classes work is basically, it's like you join for the live classes which at this point is like sold out. So the October one is sold out. The next one is going to be just in January, I believe. But they're always like the pre-recorded stuff. So the pre-recorded stuff works like this. I have like the 3-in-1, which is like 3 projects. So it's like May, June, and July. So that means 120 hours of content for $800. And then you can buy individually as well. So like each one of them, like May, June, or July, for $550. And it doesn't matter which one you buy. I can upgrade you very easily to the next step. For example, like if you buy like something like $550, and then you decide later on I'm going to do the live, for example, in January, right? I can just send you a coupon and you can just pay for the difference, which is like $400. And then when you get the live, you automatically get access to this package here. So basically, like you're getting the 3-in-1 package and then plus the live. So you're getting like 160 hours of content across 4 entire projects, which to me is a very nice deal. It's like, but a hater is gonna disagree. But yeah, I mean, like in this one, for example, if you buy this $800 here, you get like as soon as you put your payment down, you get instant access to all the 3 classes. And for example, just so people can see how it looks like, if, for example, like if you click any of those, you have like the course in here. You're gonna get to a virtual room like this, like a virtual classroom. And then here you're gonna have access to all those videos in HD, right? You're gonna have access to all of them in there. And then, this one is like I was sculpting live, showing like how is this sculpting the whole thing. And I think the first one here was this one I posted as a sketch, like a time lapse, so then you can see how I blocked the form starting from a sphere. So everything is in there, it's like there's a lot of content. It's like 16 modules, and then each one of them is packed with stuff, it's like 2 hours of stuff. So
there is a lot. There is really a lot of material that I can see. A lot.
Yeah. It's a lot, man. Each one of those classes has a bunch of things, right? And then you read the text in there, you can see like XGen. It goes across everything, like from the modeling ZBrush to texturing ZBrush. Everything is, the difference, I think, between my class and a lot of classes out there is that everything is hand sculpted. So pores, wrinkles, everything is hand sculpted. I talked like extensively about it, how I approach this one. My approach to likeness is a very artistic one. So basically, I'm not using any scans. I'm not using any texturing XYZ, anything. Everything is completely artistic, and everything is done right in front of you. Obviously, like I need more time to go ahead with the work. So I work during the class live, and then I keep working for another hour, 2 hours. So the next day, they're going to see a little bit more of the work done, but none of the stuff I do offline is new. It's basically like, it's just like a repetition of the stuff I'm teaching online. Everything is covered. So, pores, wrinkles, it's like even the clay renders, I speak about it. And yeah, it's like everything is covered. So if you have any interest to learn like portraits in a different way, kind of like in a very artistic way, it's like I would encourage you guys to take the class. But I mean, and there's also here you can find like in the webpage, there is a free class here. It's 1 hour actually of class. You can see how the dynamics work, it's like and that's about it. So let me talk about the work.
Guys, that's Kris' website. So it's flyonthewall.studio. Check it out. I think you will really enjoy his course because you can learn a lot from Kris. I mean, look at his portfolio. It can't be wrong.
And this is a gallery made by the artists where I already took my class. It's like there's a lot of awesome work done in there. But obviously, like the kind of work that I do, it takes time. It takes me like a month, 2 months to complete a portrait. Yeah. So, it's like people who took my class in May, just now they're starting to actually come up, like, it's like with the final pieces and stuff. So it takes some time. But the stuff that was already posted in there is really cool. It's like all those artists, it's like they are doing amazing work. And obviously, like I cannot take credit for how amazing artists they already are. It's just like helping them, it's like a lot of those guys are already super talented. Helping with certain things, it's like anything I can help. It's like there's some like very high profile artists who took my class so far. A lot of them are not going to post anything, but it's like but I'm pretty sure like there is something that they gathered from that experience as well, because they made sure I know that they tell me that by email or whatever. It's like a very positive experience overall, I would say. It's like, and I'm really enjoying it too. Like, it's something I like doing. So, yep. Let's talk about the work a little bit. So this is the one, and you guys probably saw that online. This one was the one done during the class of May for my class, like during the class. And then so I posted this one online, and obviously, like, the likeness is not quite there. I think I have like plenty of room to improve. There's something about the scale of the eyes, and there's a couple of things here and there. The peach fuzz is too strong and everything. But the thing is, like, if you have like a month to complete a piece like that, obviously there's stuff that's gonna be missing, And I'm not ever happy with anything I do. So it's the kind of work that I'm gonna be revisiting a couple of times until I have something that I'm happier with. And also, like, those portraits, you can see, like, it's a very boring pose, right? Like, it's just like, it's a neutral pose. It's completely symmetrical. The pose is symmetrical. The face is asymmetrical, but the pose is symmetrical. So my intention is to actually at some point pose them, have a little bit of more rotation of the head, it's like rotate the eyes and improve the work. But that's the kind of stuff that takes time, For the latest one I did, for the last class, it was my wife's portrait, which is a very tricky one because...
super cool.
I'm actually trying to please different groups of people, right? Okay. Because some people are like, it's like, oh, he just models old people. He doesn't know how to model a younger person or a woman. I bet he's going to get in trouble with that. And then it's just like, it's also nice because, like, since I got into this deal about, like, if you sign for my class of May, I'm going to give you June and July for free. If you sign for June, you're gonna get May. It's like you're always gonna get the 3-pack. It doesn't matter how you sign it, unless you sign like the individual class, which is the cheapest one. Then you're not gonna get the 3-pack.
Yeah.
But that was like from the get-go. I was like, since May, I always told them, it's like my plan is to actually keep you guys updated. It's almost like the Zbrush update thing, right? You never pay for an upgrade.
Yeah.
But because I learn stuff during those classes. I learn a lot from my students as well. They have like different techniques. They're very experienced artists. And then if I learn something new, I want to be able to actually pass that information along to my students. So as someone who learned something in May, probably like when they get to the July class, I'm going to be approaching things slightly different. And I want them to have access to those upgrades. So that's why I'm doing this, So for this class here, the biggest challenge was not even like the likeness. I think like I still have to work on the likeness, but it's because the hair, there's a lot of stuff going on in there, and the render turned like this. Let me show you. So that's the render so far. I'm still working on it. The face has still like the spots they look a little bit too artificial. I have to blend them back a little bit and then add some more variation in the skin. But the character looks alive, and to me, that's all that matters. And the way that I normally try to tell people during those classes is that this is like an outdoors kind of lighting. I was experimenting with it, but not quite happy with it. I try to tell people, for example, like in the first like 2 or 3 modules of my class, you're going to be already doing some renders in Arnold with lighting, with HDRI and stuff. Because the way I approach it is like, I don't want to build everything linearly and I only going to know what's going to happen at the very end. What I do is just like, I try to put a scene together as fast as possible so I can actually evaluate those forms as a physical object. So sketch in ZBrush, and then I bring this sketch into Maya, even before topology or anything, like a higher resolution version of it. And I already start like exploring some HDRIs and some like area lights and assembling my scene kind of like to get the mood of it. And then from that point on, it's just iterations, It's like every time I bring the model, then later on I'm going to do like create a topology for it. So I'm going to start bringing the topology plus displacement maps, and then it's going to replace the rough sketch that I had before. Maybe the HDRIs are going to be playing with different ones across the entire project. And then it's all iterating in the same scene. But the thing is, like, you are able to evaluate exactly what you're seeing, because in an interface like ZBrush, it's hard for you to, it's like to evaluate lighting when you don't have like a precise shadow happening in there, unless you render like in external engine, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I do like, even if it's a very rough sketch, I start here, and then every time I compare my work to a photo, for example, a photo reference, I'm going to try to do that using the render as a reference, not the ZBrush model as a reference. And then I think it's easier, you get to the likeness faster that way than trying to fight ZBrush a little bit in a way, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so, and then in ZBrush, what I have is like the model, that's the way it looks in here. My approach is using HD geometry for everything. So I want to make sure I capture all the detail that I'm sculpting. And so, for example, this model here, you look like the highest resolution I have for the model is 1.1 million polygons. The lowest is 17. But then the model I export to Maya for rendering is the second subdivision level. So I'm going to export to 69,000 polys. But the detail I'm getting is not even the detail from 1.1. It's actually the detail from the HD geometry. So to see the HD geometry or to enter HD geometry, you're going to have to press A. And the way it works is like this. You subdivide your mesh all the way to 1 to 2 million polygons, no more than that, like regular subdivisions. And then you stop right there. And then from that point on, you switch to HD geometry, and then you divide HD. And it's not going to show you anything different here. You're just going to see the poly count growing, but then you're not going to see anything different. But then to access that HD mode, you're going to have to rest your mouse in an area and then press A. And then it's going to enter HD geometry. So for example, like if I wanna sculpt like the face, right? So let's see, I have my poly groups in here, and let's say I'm not even going to use the poly group. Let's try. Let's see. Let's just select this one, and then this one. Gonna get the nostrils as well, and I'm gonna get the lips, but not the inner mouth or the inner sockets of the eyes or ears, because here's the thing, like you have to be very economic with HD, because although ZBrush now is 64 bits, it still has a limit of HD polygons it can sculpt at a time. And in my case here, I think I get between 30 and 40 million at a time. So now the smart way is to hide everything you don't need. For example, like I can even go further here and hide the rest and just keep the mask like that, right? Yeah. And then I'm gonna just I normally start HD from the side, so I'm gonna go to the side and around the nose, and here I'm gonna press A. And now this is gonna go to HD mode. Let's see how many polygons we get. So you got the entire chunk of the face in HD now at 26 million polygons. So if I isolate, if I press solo here, now it's isolated. This is all HD, and now I can sculpt in real time, just like regular ZBrush. But now I have access to all this awesome detail. And I can sculpt, like, for example, like the entire head and shoulders have about 72 million polygons. And then with that, I can actually go to town with the details. You know, it's like as long as you have a nice topology, obviously you can play with. In this case, here is a reasonable good topology, but not perfect. So it has like a nice flow for the edges and everything. And but the most important thing is that the distribution of the polygons, it's pretty consistent across the face, especially in areas that are going to stretch a lot. So for example, like if you have the nose, you can see the nose already has a little bit more spread out edges in there, and the cheeks as well. So if you have like a model, let's say, let's go back here to HD. Let me try to explain that in a way that it's kind of easy. So for example, like if I'm planning to sculpt something in HD, I know for a fact that like my ideal numbers for HD, if it's like a face and shoulders, like I have those busts, I would say between 70 and 100 million polygons would be ideal, because I can get pore detail everywhere. So that's basically the model. So if I'm planning to have a model that's around 100 million polygons, for example, right? Let's get like a calculator in here. Let's see. This is something that it's a little bit technical, but it's very important for people to realize that you can actually plan your models, right? Yeah. So for example, like you have like 100 million polygons that would be like your sweet spot. Let's say like 90 million, because this one has 72 and I already had a lot of stuff. So let's start with 90 million polygons here, and you're going to divide that by 4, right? By 4, by 4, by 4, by 4. So 87,000 or 21,000. So you can either choose like 88,000 polygons or 22,000 polys. That would be your base mesh. Because now you know that if you subdivide this, all those times that I subdivided back, actually, you know, this decompose that number, you're going to go exactly to that number that you need. That's the 90 million polygons. So you can plan your model to have, for example, like more faces in the face itself, right? You can have like more polygons in the face itself right there. And then maybe you can, you have more spread out stuff in areas not too important. For example, the head, it's like get those big polygons in there because it doesn't matter that much. But, planning your model is important. And then if you have that number in mind, you can actually plan, it's like, okay, I have to delete a bunch of edges to get to that ideal number. But I know for a fact that if I subdivide that many times, I'm going to get to the perfect spot that I need. And then obviously you have to be able to bring this to Maya and render it, right? So when you export something from ZBrush and you export it from HD geometry, it's not different from anything else you do. Normally what I do here, the difference is this. So to make sure that I export just the difference between the lowest resolution and the highest from the HD, what I do is this. I save a morph target. So I click like, it's 3 steps. So you're going to do First, let's just export this model. So I'm going to export this model temporarily.
Okay.
Before I do anything, I'm going to do like, it's like head temp 1. Okay. So that's exported. And then now I do this little thing. It sounds stupid, but it works. So you're going to do 3 steps: store, switch, and then import. And you're going to bring back that model. And then from this point on, you cannot go up in resolution. Just stay right there. So you're going to go to your plugins, Z plugin, and you're going to go to the multi-map exporter. So here the trick is this: you can export like either just the displacement or displacement and color, and then the color is going to be captured from the HD. So you can export like super high resolution maps straight from ZBrush right here. So you can export both if you want. And then I normally use the 8K for my maps. So ZBrush has presets for up to 4K, but you can crank the slide like manually to 8K. And then the whole trick here is to use the switch morph target. So this button has to be on, because remember what I did? I just store, switch, and import it. So ZBrush is going to use the buffer that's stored as a morph target, and it's going to compare, and it's going to notice that there's no difference between the base mesh and what's the base for all the HD geometry stuff, and it's going to calculate just a difference. That's going to guarantee like a more precise representation of what ZBrush has in HD. Sorry. Now the trick here is this. You see, like I have this slide here at 2 instead of 1. So if I export as 1, ZBrush is going to be comparing to the very base level, like the level 1. But remember, I'm exporting the level 2 to Maya. Instead of like the 17,000 polygons, I'm exporting the 69,000 polygons. So that's why I have to do this and tweak this slider here. So ZBrush can compare and generate the displacement map in relation to the second level instead of in relation to the first level. And the reason I do that, those are the other settings, by the way, you can copy if you want. The reason I do that is that I want to make sure that my model is a little bit more high res in ZBrush, in Maya, because I'm placing hair in here, and I don't want to have to fight and have to, it's like do kind of like offset the hair into the face and stuff like that. I want to make sure that it's easier for me to groom in something that has more polygons like that. So that's the whole reason. And then once I have that in place and the hair is all placed as well, for example, like my interactive stuff is only layers here. So I have the eyelashes, it's all X-Gen, so upper eyelashes. I have the peach fuzz. The peach fuzz is very hard to see, but you're going to see right there. And then I have the lower eyelashes. Then I have the eyebrows. Sometimes I have multiple layers for eyebrows. I still have to add a couple. Then I have the main hair in here. And then I have some flyaways. So you're going to see like those flyaways separate. And then I have some nostril hair. Gross. Right there. Right. So all those things are done in layer, and they ride nicely on top of the mid-resolution stuff, And then X-Gen is pretty cool. Oh, there's a problem right there. Like, I have to rebuild the hair. Every time you have that, you just have to rebuild the hair. But you see, like
I have to
Oh,
stop
sorry.
you and ask you a question because a lot of info. I mean, this is awesome that what I'm watching, but guys are asking one question, and I think it's the moment to ask it. So they are
Okay.
asking. So when you export HD Geo in a texture map, do you need to set the max sub-D level higher in the exporter to get the HD information?
No.
No.
Basically, like what I'm doing here is exactly how you do it. You store, switch, and import the mesh, the base mesh. Don't go higher. Just keep it right there. So,
Yeah.
and then you go to your export, and then you use those settings I just passed here, and just click like create all maps, and you're done. That's all it takes. Yeah,
I see.
you don't go to the highest. And then ZBrush is smart enough to recognize when there is any HD geometry sculpt detail in there. And then if there is anything in there, it can be color or form. ZBrush is going to capture and going to bake into the maps.
Excellent, excellent. So they wanted to ask you that, so I immediately wanted to answer. But this is some amazing stuff, man. I'm enjoying so much to see this process because I don't work on this kind of stuff. This is amazing, amazing.
And then for the eyes, I mean, like the eyes is something like it's very important, right? Like the windows of the soul.
Yeah.
For the teeth, I mean, like this is the first time I actually experimented with that. So I have like the teeth all in the same mesh. So it's like some people they rather build in different meshes. I thought it was a cool thing to have everything combined because it's like the transitions are nicer. I don't get like some artifacts in the subsurface scattering that way. And it's just easier overall, you know. It's like, if I show you how I have the teeth in here in ZBrush, so I have the teeth. Where is it? Right here. Let me turn off solo. So I have the teeth in there, and you see I have like even the little bubbles around there. Yeah, and those bubbles are so easy to make. You know, it's like it's the kind of stuff you can use like the Z sketch, for example, right? So that means you just bring like let's see. Yeah, you just bring, for example, like a Z-sphere as a subtool, and then you just switch to Z-sketch, click edit, and then you can just like start like actually building those things.
Nice. And
you just have to crank the resolution, you know. It's like, obviously you can eliminate some of them. I have a ton of them, but this is so subtle, you know. It's like it's in the renders, but you can barely see it. You just see like a tiny little highlight here and there, which is the objective, you know. It's like just to have something very subtle in there. But for example, the eyes is another thing that's important. And the way I sculpt the eyes, so like the way that's it's modeled here, it's very simple geometry, right? I have the caruncula, and I have a transparency ramp map in here that's going to help to blend this entire area. Is going to look very, very perfect. So there's a transparency map in there. But the eyes themselves, so for example, I have the eyeball in here. And I normally what I do, I try to make sure that my UVs are completely spot on right in the middle. So I can actually use like a round ramp to actually blend. So actually I can grow or shrink the iris slightly just by using a ramp in here. And then for the iris itself, obviously I could actually use you know, it's like a vector displacement. Yeah. But the thing is, like, vector displacement is still like a convoluted process, and sometimes, you know, it's like it's hard to get it right. So what I do, instead of like exporting like a vector displacement to get the ins and outs of a geometry that's a little complex like that, what I do, I actually subdivide a couple of times in ZBrush and export a higher resolution, which is this one here, which is like high resolution, but it's nothing, right? Like it's 53,000 polys, and I don't have like the complete globe. So I just use a disk, because remember I have like a blending area around here, so this is going to completely disappear. So it's a waste to just have like the entire thing as a globe. And then for the UVs, the same stuff. You know, it's like it's right in the middle, so I can actually use ramps to actually tweak this color, things like that. And this is all sculpted in HD as well. There are videos on my Instagram if you want to check it out. There's a time lapse about me going from the disk all the way to the final stuff. Nice. It's all it's in my Instagram. There's a time lapse of the whole sculpt of this iris here, and then there's another one that I didn't have in the past that I started experimenting with it, and I like the result, which is like I added this little bubble in here right in front of the iris, and because the eye we have a bunch of different structures in there, so we have this sclera itself with the cornea. Yeah. Right here, right? And then this stuff, it has a little depth to it. So for example, like it's not like it's just like it's a thin surface but has a volume to it. So what I decided to do is to add a little bit of an offset. So I can tell there is a little bit of an offset. So instead of like being just like a single-sided object, it has two sides now. So I did that because the eye, it has different properties. So right in front of the cornea here, you're going to have like an index of refraction that, for example, like I don't remember correctly, but maybe like 1.38 for this specific piece. But then the liquid inside of it has a different index of refraction, probably like 134.
Yeah.
And then in the past, I would just build one single object and average the two and do like, oh, okay, let's call it 136. And then that's it. But then I started doing this one for Jessica. Actually, I like the results. So I don't know, I might keep doing this way or maybe not. But right now it's in three pieces. So I have the outside with the cornea and the sclera all combined. And I have this little liquid here. And then I have the iris, which is just a little disc, just like blocking the light in there. So there is nothing in there. Sometimes I bring it even deeper, but I don't need it. So it's just like basically like a black void.
Yeah.
And then the iris itself. So it's a very simple geometry. One thing that people notice like straight away when they do my classes is that how simple everything is. I mean, like coming from visual effects, like working with this stuff professionally, you know, everything is very complicated because it's a big pipeline and there are so many moving pieces and so many people waiting for you for your part of the job. So everything is very complicated. But what I try to do is to show them that you can create realistic results with very simplified workflows. So for example, like my shader network is simple. If I open here, you can see it straight away. Let me open the shader network so you can see what's plugged in there.
I need to ask you before you continue. They asked also, does the export option work the same way for any other engine in Maya, or is the workflow only for Arnold?
That's a good question. I mean, like for Arnold, so for example, like you saw in Zbrush, the main thing here to notice in Zbrush is that I'm using the mid value at 0.
Yeah.
So by default, 0.5 is what Zbrush uses, which is basically like gray. So you're using gray, and then from that point, like anything that's negative is going to go towards black, and if everything that's positive is going to go towards white.
Yeah.
And that works great for 16-bit maps, for example, right? So you need a mid-resolution gray because there is no such thing as a negative value for a 16-bit map. But you notice that I'm using 32-bit maps, the XRs. So when you have 32-bit maps, indeed you can go negative values. So Arnold expects you to export with 0 level. So basically, like you start with black, and then everything that's like positive displacement is going to go towards white, right? So it's going to get more towards gray and white. And everything that's negative is going to be minus black, basically. It's going to be negative black.
Yeah.
So that's basically what Arnold expects. So if I go to my settings in here and I show you under Arnold, you go to the displacement attributes, you see like everything is set to 0. So basically, Arnold's expecting you to use 0 as the starting point. If you use a different map, then you're going to have to tweak those values. But that's basically what I use. I remember like back in the day using Mental Ray, you actually had to add some offset. So you would have like in the map itself, if you have a displacement map, let's say, this model here has so many nodes because it has all the hair stuff. Let me get to the last one. So the displacement itself here, if you're using like back in the day, I was thinking both Arnold, V-Ray and also Mental Ray use the same stuff, I think, which was the color balance. You would use like the alpha as a luminance, and then you would have to use like 0. minus, it's like 1 for gain and minus 0.5 for the offset to be able to capture that. If you're using 0.5 for the mid level, right?
Yeah.
But for Arnold, that's exactly the way Arnold expects you to do it, which is basically like using that 0 in there. So,
I see.
But I wish I had more time to show a lot of stuff. But yeah, we are kind of like we extrapolate a little bit. I would say like let's do another 6 minutes because that closes in about an hour and a half, right?
Sure, let's do it a little bit longer. I would like to ask you 2 more questions from the guys, and then we can finish. Sure. I think so. They are asking, how do you find the motivation to go back to your previous work, which has been delayed for some various reasons? to improve and complete them?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, completing is a strong word.
Yeah, it's never
because
done. It's never done.
it's always abandoned, right? Like every piece of artwork is always abandoned, never finished. But I think the motivation is just like when I'm working on something, just like everybody else, it's like we get used to the model, we get used to the work. Oh, by the way, this is my shader network for the skin. Look, like there's nothing in there. It's just like very few.
Clean.
Yeah. And everything else, it's like the number of models I use is sort of like the eye is like 4 pieces, it's like the teeth is a single piece, and everything is very simple. I try to push like as far as I can with the very simple stuff. If I need more things, if I'm feeling like, okay, the number of maps I'm using, which is basically like 4 or 5 maps I use for the entire face. If I need more maps, then I'm gonna add more. And last thing before I get into the question. So just to show the UVs in here for her face, basically like I have like 5 UDIMs because I want to make sure that I have like if I have 72 million polygons in HD, I want to make sure I can capture all the detail in maps. And if you do the calculation, like a 4K map, for example, is basically like 4K times 4K, which is like 16 million polygons worth of detail. If you're using like 100% of the tile, which is impossible.
Yeah.
So that means that, it's like if I'm using 4K maps and I'm using like 50% of each tile, I have probably like 8 million polygons in each one of the tiles. So 8 times 5 is like 40. So if I'm using like 4K maps, using like 50% of each tile, that's going to give me only 40 million polygons. Yeah. And I need more than that. So that's why I use like 8K for those, just so I have like some breathing room in there. But back to the question, I think it comes from never being satisfied with my work and being too used to it. It's like, so during those classes, for example, it's a lot of pressure for me because I have to teach people, I have to make sure that they are learning something, but I have to make sure that I create something that doesn't suck at the end. It's like, because I want people to actually feel inspired somehow. It's like and see that within that contest I can actually create something kind of complete, but not totally complete, because it's like how much more time you're going to put after the class is up to you, right?
Yeah.
But those works I'm showing is basically like those are done during the class and probably like maybe like a day or two after the class, just to wrap it up. But there's a lot of room for improvement in every single one of them. So I have that always in the back of my mind. So when I did the classes May, June, and July, it was back to back. I had no breathing room. I would finish something on Friday and then start a new class like on Monday, and that was crazy because my health a little suffered with that. So for the next year, I'm gonna do like month in, month out, I guess, and so I can have it's like 1 month rest, because you have to remember I have a full-time job too. Yeah. But then so when I see those models, I see all the problems. It's like some people out there, they think they're geniuses because they are seeing what's wrong with the model. It's like, oh, the pitch fuzz is too strong. Oh, the teeth doesn't look realistic, looks fake. I know, I can see it. It just takes time because there's a lot of stuff involved. It's a simple approach, but the number of tests you have to do in order to get something that looks good, it's insane. Like so many iterations. So all this stuff, like I'm not comfortable with my work. I always wanted to revisit it, and my motivation is just like knowing I can do better. It's like it's always knowing that I can push myself further, and also like obviously like seeing the amazing work being done by other people motivates me as well. But it's especially concerning to me, like to know that there's something that I posted out there that I'm not happy, but I had to post, and then it's kind of like everything's kind of temporary to me. I know that there's a lot of people out there who rather post something that's close to perfect, but not post like any work in progress at all. So basically, like they go like. It's like all of a sudden, like boom, it's like, oh, this amazing piece, right? And I was like, oh man, that's pretty cool. And then they post a little making off and then explaining how they did and everything. But after they are happy with it, right? Yeah. They are happy with it, and then they post and then they share the progress because, okay, I'm comfortable now. I'm not that person. I mean, like I'm constantly uncomfortable with my work because I'm posting constant work in progress. I post all the steps, and then there's a step that's gonna suck. There's a step that's gonna suck even more. There's a step that things gonna start falling into place and gonna start looking better, and I'm gonna feel more comfortable with it. And then there's a spot like at the end. I was like, okay, I'm comfortable enough to post as a quotes, right? Final piece, but it's not a final piece.
Yeah.
But that's the way I do it. It's like, and I think it's important for people watching the process to understand that there is no magic button for anything, right? It's like, it's not like someone just like, okay, I'm gonna start doing a realistic portrait in here, and things just gonna work perfectly. If you're in my class, you're gonna see sometimes me struggling, sometimes the computer crashing, and everything is live, so you can actually follow what's going on, the drama around the piece, right? Yeah, it's like watching a action movie, and then and you're gonna see like, and I give like it's like some heads up to the people. I say like, we're gonna get into XGen in about 2 or 3 days, and it's gonna crash.
Yeah.
I'm not Nostradamus here. I'm not like but I know it's gonna crash, and I know I'm gonna get some bugs with it. So bear with me, and we all gonna get through this together. Because I think that's the message. It's like it's to show people like, okay, people working in this industry for a long time. I have like 30 movies to my credit. I have a lot of experience and everything. But I struggle with stuff constantly. I struggle with likeness. I struggle with the computers crashing on me. I struggle with all kinds of stuff. And I want to make sure that people understand that they see this process, because they're going to be the person doing that very soon. Maybe they just need like to up their skills a little bit more, but the struggle is going to be the same. It's like, no matter how good you are, likeness is always going to be a bitch. Not if you're cheating. By cheating, I mean like using scans and stuff like that, right? Like cheating codes, right? But you're getting all the primary forms in place for free. You just have to do cleanup. So that to me is like, it's kind of cheating. But if you're sculpting everything by hand and then trying to nail a likeness by looking at your second monitor, which is basically what I do, post a bunch of pictures in the second monitor and try to nail the likeness that way, and then eventually bring one in the background of ZBrush just to check proportions and see like, okay, there's something that I cannot nail. I know it's wrong, and I cannot put my finger on it. So I bring the picture like one that I like. ZBrush start. So one picture that I like, and I post it in there in the background, and I make ZBrush interface transparent, right? And then I can check very quickly. It's like, okay, eyes need to go up slightly, mouth needs to go down slightly, maybe a little bit of the chin, and that's it. From that point on, I just put it aside and I don't do anything else. It's just like really to check proportions, which is basically any traditional artist is going to do the same by using a caliper and then measuring the distance between certain things and just making sure that the proportions are in place, But I avoid a lot, it's like using as much as possible, using any trick like that, because the whole objective is to actually challenge myself. When you have a full-time job and you're doing a lot of stuff with the digital doubles and all this stuff, you have access to all kinds of stuff you can imagine, like from scans to texturing XYZ to everything. So it's not challenging to me, It's like it's the challenge is to actually create something that can sell as a realistic render. At the same time preserving my style, It's like you're gonna notice like every single of my pieces can look realistic, but if you look closely, it has a little bit of a stylization to it, because there's no way to escape from that. It's part of the vocabulary of the way I developed as an artist, So a lot of stuff I have ways of doing that is slightly different from other people, It's like maybe if you're gonna sculpt lips, right? Like you're gonna approach it slightly different from someone other person, because you're kind of like idealizing a lot of the work. And it's the same. I mentioned like I love guitar playing, but I'm not a guitar player.
Yeah.
And I say like, dude, if you look at the best guitar players out there, it's all in the touch. It's like it's the sometimes they don't have any pedals or anything connected, and the sound is amazing. And it's just the way that they touch. It's like it's the expression of the artist. And my class, what I try to reinforce to people is like, I'm trying to preserve your expression as an artist. I'm trying to give you tools so you can actually create something more realistic, but without basically like making everything sterile by removing, it's like the struggle by it's like adding scans to the equation or anything. Is really like to challenge people, to challenge myself as I do the class, because it's a challenge to me every time as well. I never know where the model is going to end, right? Like I started fresh and I was like, okay, let's hope for the best and let's go in this ride. And then I expect people to feel the same, it's like to feel inspired to be challenged, because the best artists out there, they are not lazy at all. They are very hard workers. And if you start from a point of laziness, I don't think you have a lot of future in this industry, because like I said, it's like being a problem solver is the main thing. And if you're a lazy person, you're never going to be a problem solver, because you're always going to be relying on other people. It's like you're always going to be asking people for the free stuff and for the easy way to learn, right? But if you're a problem solver, you're normally going to stop asking questions. You're going to really, okay, I'm going to open Zbrush and for the first time, and I heard that the interface sucks. So let's see how much it sucks. I was like, well, I don't understand a lot of what's going on here, but what about tutorials? Is there any tutorial out there I can look for? Then you're going to type on Google. Oh, there's a bunch of tutorials at Zbrush website. There's a bunch in Google, in YouTube as well. Okay, let's watch a couple of them. And all of a sudden, like, the mystery about the interface goes away, because the guy just put some effort, it's like put some interest. So I try to encourage people to do that, put effort, because, it's like the reward is going to be much bigger, right? Because you're going to feel proud of yourself, because you went after the information, you got the information, and you learn, So in my class, I like to think that I'm kind of like facilitating things in a certain way, but I'm actually teaching people how to fish. I'm not giving the fish at all. Okay. I'm just like, yeah, you want to know
that's a good comparison. That's a good.
Yeah,
I like
it. Like my brushes and everything. Oh, I love your brushes. Can you share? It's like, no. But what about I show you exactly how I build it? And let's look at the settings. Here are every single setting for the brush, and this is the way I build it. And then go ahead and build your own, because now you're going to have your a little bit of yourself in that brush, and you're going to be proud of it, because you're not simply like using from someone else, So that's kind of like part of my philosophy. I come from a place of like working hard for my shit, and I kind of expect people to do the same,
I think that's a honest way to say it. Every good artist is working insanely hard. He's not working from 9 to 5. So, but I can see from your work how much time you invested. Like, it's years of hard work, and I can see it.
Yeah.
So I think we can wrap up now. There has been so many amazing things on this stream that we saw, guys. I'm sure that you learned something amazing from a great artist like Kris. So hit him up for the course. I strongly suggested that you take it, because I think it's a high quality course. You saw how much material there is. And Kris, thank you for coming on the stream.
Man, my pleasure. Thanks to you and to all the people watching right now. And I'm sorry that I bailed before, but we are here and we did it.
No worries. It happens, man, as I told you. But we're going to do it one more time, I'm sure. So thank you for coming, guys. Hit the subscribe button if you didn't. More cool artists are coming. The next one is talking about 3D print and collectibles. So thank you for coming, Kris. I wish you a good day.
Oh, last thing, just follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, they should follow you on Instagram. Please do post it. I will post it in the chat. So,
okay, you posted the chat. Yeah, awesome.
I will post it in the chat now. And yeah, guys, follow Kris and follow me, and that's it. See you around, guys. Have a beautiful evening or a day. I don't know what time is it. Bye, Kris.
Thank you. Thanks for everything. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.